listening to the Confidence Alchemist Radio Show with your host, the Confidence Alchemist himself, Keith Blakemore-Noble. To find out more, visit theconfidencealchemist.com. But not before you've listened to this episode of the Confidence Alchemist Radio Show.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Confidence Alchemist Radio Show. I'm really pleased to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about, it's just you and me today, dear listener. It's another one of those episodes. Today I'm going to be sharing a little bit teaching material basically today. It's all about how we perceive the world, how others perceive the world, and in particular 3 specific things that we do which, although they have a lot of benefit for us, they can also cause all manner of problems for us. So we're going to take a look at them, what they are, how we do them, and we're also going to take a look at how we can recognize that we're doing them, work around them to address them, and also how we can respond to them in other people as well, because these are things that every single one of us do. We can't help but do them. We have to do them. We wouldn't be able to survive if we didn't do them. But we just got to make sure we use them the correct way. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Basically, we go through life making all sorts of judgments, evaluations, decisions, about what we think we're seeing and experiencing. Very often, we make massive mistakes in the way that we see the world. And we don't actually see the way the world is. We see it how we perceive it to be. And that can cause us significant problems as we try to deal with things that are not there. It can create massive misunderstandings, all of these sorts of things. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. Sound good? I certainly hope so. So let's kind of dive in. So what am I talking about? The 3 things that we do. If you've done any NLP study with me or with anywhere else, or even if you're aware of it, you may well have come across the 3 terms: deletion, distortion, and generalization. And that's basically what we're talking about today. So what are these? These are basically, you can think of these as gatekeepers, which kind of help to model our experience of the world. Now, some of this goes back to what we've spoken about in previous episodes. Remember, we've spoken about the fact that we're constantly bombarded by 2 million bits of information every second. Our senses are being assaulted by these 2 million bits of information. I say assaulted. Our senses are there to gather this information. That's why we have those senses. That's what they do. So our senses are gathering this 2 million bits of information every single second. But that's way more than we can consciously process. The conscious mind can only handle 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. That's about 140 bits of information. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't pay attention to because we can't pay attention to it. And we've spoken before about how we have a whole lot of filters, beliefs, values, all manner of different ones. We've looked at many of them in the past. We'll look at some more again in the future. But these 3 particular things that we're looking at today are these are three of the gatekeepers: deletions, distortions, and generalizations, which filter the information that comes into our senses. So let's take a very quick look at what they are first, and then we'll dive into a bit more detail later. So the first one, as I mentioned, is deletion. Now, as you might imagine, this is where we delete bits of information. We're very selective about our experiences. We leave bits out, we delete those bits. For example, they may not register, or we may perceive them as being unimportant. Here's an example for you. Have you ever, you've been looking for your keys, right? Searching everywhere. You've searched the house top to bottom for the keys. You cannot find them. And then eventually somebody else spots them and finds them, and they were in a place. You were basically sat staring at the keys for 5 minutes and just did not see them, yeah? We've all been there, right? Please tell me we've all been there. It's not just me, is it? I hope. Anyway, we've all been there. Or you open a cupboard to look for an ingredient and you just cannot see the tin for staring at it. It's right there in front of you. You just cannot see it. Any women who are listening, if you sent your husband into the kitchen to get a particular ingredient for the meal, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, right? These are examples of deletions. We kind of just, for whatever reason, don't perceive that piece of information. We're constantly deleting information. As I say, we get 2 million bits every second. We can't process all of it. For example, until I mentioned it, you probably weren't really aware of the slight movement of the air on your hand and perhaps across your face. Okay, you're aware of it now. because I mentioned it, but you weren't. It weren't until a moment or two ago. You were deleting that information. Now there's a lot more to it than this, and we'll look at this in a few moments. But I just wanted to give a quick overview right now. So that's deletions. The next one is distortions. This is where we distort our experiences. You can almost think of it like, you know, those halls of mirrors you get at fairgrounds. Ooh, freaky things. That's kind of what a distortion is, and we'll look a bit more in throughout the show. We'll take a closer look at what these things are. I just want to give an overview a moment. The third one is generalizations. Generalizations. We take certain aspects of our experiences, certain things that we experience, and we decide to apply that to every category of that experience. And worse than that, we ignore the exceptions. Now, this can be very useful because this is how we can learn from things that we've done before. We can apply those lessons and those learnings to things in the future. And we'll take a look at how in a moment. But the problem with generalizations is sometimes we can generalize incorrectly. That's where the big problem comes in. Now, deletions, distortions, generalizations, they're not good, they're not bad, they just are. They are just how we process. The key thing is how we apply them. I mean, if we didn't delete some sensory information, as I mentioned earlier, some of the sensory information that we're getting in, we would be in complete sensory overload, which would be an awful place to be. On the other hand, we're going to be careful because we may be deleting just that bit of information that we need to pay attention to. We might be ignoring some important feedback from other people. For example, if somebody's giving you feedback, you might hear all the negative points, all the criticisms, all the things you did wrong, but you might not notice the positives that they're giving. Yeah? Sound familiar? So you might pick up the negatives, but delete the positives. Just they don't even register. Even though the person gave you negatives and positives, you may only take the negatives from it. That is a form of deletion. And you can see how that can cause problems, yeah? And again, we're going to look at each of these in more detail as we go through the show. I'm just giving you an overview at the moment. Distortions. Now, if we didn't distort, well, without distortion, we have zero creativity. Let me give you a great example of distortion. The room that you're in at the moment, whatever you are at the moment, whether you're in a room or whether you're outside or in your car, wherever you are at the moment, look at the wall, or perhaps look at the bodywork of the car. Wherever you are, look at the wall or something along those lines. Now, seeing it there in whatever colour it is, just imagine what it would be in a different colour. Imagine how that wall would look in, say, purple or brown or yellow. Imagine what the bodywork of your car would look like in silver or gold or deep maroon. You can imagine that, yeah? That's distortion. That's a great example of distortion. You are distorting the reality. This is a sensory distortion. Without distortion, we would not have creativity. It's as simple as that. However, the problem with distortion is that we can misapply it. We can see somebody looking at us in a particular way, and we can decide that means they are judging us, they're criticizing us, they resent us or whatever. Even though they may not be. We are distorting the meaning behind the look, which means we're distorting their view of us. We're distorting their beliefs. And we react according to that distortion. So we could see somebody, we could, through the distortion, decide that they're hostile and treat them accordingly, even though they were actually coming to us with perfectly friendly intent. And you can see how that could cause a lot of problems, right? Oh, yes. Excuse me. Now, so we've had deletions, we've had distortions, generalizations. See, generalizations are what allow us to make sense of the world. So deletions prevent us from being overloaded. Distortion allows us to get creative. Generalizations help us to make sense of the world. It lets us apply things from the past to things in the future. Take a cup. Take something as simple as a cup. Cups come in all shapes and sizes and colours. And we see a cup, We then see a different cup which looks very, very different. Maybe it has 2 handles instead of 1. Maybe it's a different colour, a different shape, size, different material. We're seeing it from a different perspective, but we still know it's a cup, right? We've generalised what cups are. So we know a cup when we see it. That's how we can recognise people. We may not recognise who they are, but then we know they're a person because we have a generalised view of what a person looks like, what a chair is. We know generally how a door handle will work. So we don't get stumped when we come upon a different door handle and find ourselves trapped in the room because we don't know how to use that door handle, right? That's generalizations. So they are really positive. However, there's always a however with these things, right? On the other hand, generalizations can cause us problems. Suppose that you have had a bad relationship. Yeah, you had a bad relationship. You then generalize that that's how all relationships work. Or you generalize that's how all relationships you have will work. Which means you're now going through life expecting that no relationship will ever work for you. An awful place to be, yeah? Your generalization could stop you seeking out relationships because you have generalized that they're going to fail, that they behave in a particular way. So that's the problems. That's the advantages and disadvantages of deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So we use them to help us make sense of the world, to be able to process the world. But we run the risk of misapplying them, as with all of these things. Because everybody has biases. We all have biases and perceptions, and these deletions, distortions, generalizations are part of that. Some people will do more deleting. Some people will do more distorting. Some people will do more generalization. So there are different ways in which these can apply. So, I mean, for example, people who delete people who tend to do more in the way of deletions, they're able to make great big leaps in their thinking. They can see the big picture. They can make, if you've ever spoken to someone and they go from leap to leap to leap to leap in logic or wherever, and it's kind of difficult to follow. How the heck do they get to there from here? Yeah, that would be somebody who deletes more than anything else. They've got great concentration as well. Someone who's good at deleting is great at concentrating because they can delete all the extraneous stuff while they really focus all their attention deleting the distractions. Deleting is a great skill to have if you are meditating, for example. Being able to delete all extractions, be they sensory, be they physical, be they mental. Beautiful thing to have. Distortions, people who tend to distort more than any others, they often surprise us with their interpretations, with the way they see things. They can see cause and effect links in all manner of ways which we would never even dream of. They can make what seem to us to be weird connections. And they can also be incredibly creative. Creativity is mainly the domain of distortion. Art, music, literature, all of these come from distortion. Without distortion, we would not have any of those. Distortion, that creates the world of take Stephen King, for example. Great world of distortion. Charles Dickens, Picasso, Salvador Dali, Impressionism, Surrealism. Surrealism is a beautiful example of distortion. Without distortion, we would have none of those. We would have none of the great works of art, none of the great works of literature, all from distortions. People who generalize, or tend to generalize more than any others, they can seem very sure of themselves, or even very unsure of themselves. To them, the world is simple. It's black or white. Things are right or wrong. It's this or that. Bam, there's no in between. No shades of grey, no maybes, no uncertainties. It's this or this. Now people who generalize will also often have a lot of rules about how to conduct themselves and others in different situations. Scientific laws are a good example of generalizations because they generalize how things work, and the scientific method itself is a great way to operate. You experiment, you generalize from the results,